Who here has heard of Plants vs. Zombies? Good, good. Who here has heard of Toys vs. Nightmares? Okay. Who here wants to crack Solar Flare? Toys vs. Nightmares is, for the sake of the video title, a knockoff of Plants vs. Zombies 1. But in actuality, it's a heavily inspired sort of tribute to PvZ1. At least, according to the developers. The concept came from an experience one of the devs had with their son, who woke up from a nightmare and was given toys and a fantasy story to help them sleep. It's a cute concept, and one that lends itself to a lot of gameplay potential. But with competition as stiff as Plants vs. Zombies 1, how well does Toys vs. Nightmares tap into its potential and stand out on its own? Well, I asked myself this question for a secret project I was involved in. But now that we're on my turf, I'd say it's worth doing a deeper dive to find out. Now, there's not a lot documented about Toys vs. Nightmares on YouTube. Mostly gameplay videos, a few Let's Plays, some mentions, 2 reviews or so, and a lost media mystery that we'll get into later. Venturing outside of YouTube yields the game's Newgrounds page, some Reddit posts, and a painfully neglected, very inaccurate fandom wiki. It's worth mentioning that with the discontinuation of Adobe Flash Player in 2020, you can't actually play Toys vs. Nightmares through Newgrounds, Miniclip, or any of the freeboot sites that still host it. To play Toys vs. Nightmares, you need Flashpoint Archive, a free program designed to view, use, and play preserved Flash content. Thus, with a simple download and search, our journey to beat the most infamous knockoff of Plants vs. Zombies 1 begins now. We're gonna play Toys vs. Nightmares. I think that's just the best way to work around it. Anyways, but I'm also joined here by a friend, a familiar face based on the avatar. It's Joss. This is Toys vs. Nightmares. Cropped in post, might I add. You don't want to know what it looked like raw. Ugh.
Ew.
Okay. The art style is very reminiscent of early Flash, and the sound is, not properly mixed. We might have mixed the volume because, here, I'll play the... This is what the game sounds like at default. It's at 5 right now. Here's it at 100. You know that almost all my background audio is mixed around 7 to 15% volume? Don't believe me? This is the audio at 100. TVN opens with an animated cutscene establishing the game's story, where you play as Chris O'Neill and have to defend your dreams from evil shagrots. Level 1 is your standard tower defense tutorial. You're provided a limited field, an introduction to resources and towers, and a showcase of the game's wave progression. However, level 2 is where things get interesting. Wait, really?
That's interesting.
This is the main mechanic of Toys vs. Nightmares. As later levels are designed around the player being able to speed up fantasy, this game's equivalent to Sun, production. I'm pretty mixed on this mechanic. On one hand, the more fantasy I could generate while idle, the better. But on the other hand, clicking more than, say, 3 books gets a little awkward. There's also the fact that clicking doubles fantasy production, not just speeding it up. I would have guessed that clicking gave half the fantasy at twice the speed, incentivizing clicking in a pinch, but not 24/7. And well, I was wrong. You only ever need this mechanic in hard levels, so you often forget it even exists in the easier ones. I don't know, this mechanic is cool on paper, but it can use some more balancing. Massacres monsters and tablemen. What does that mean? That's like a modern PvZ2 plant like description. Like what does that mean? Oh, it says right there, it hurts and slows monsters. Level 3 introduces shielded goblins, which I presume were TVN's equivalent to coneheads. However, despite just unlocking a secondary attacker, a single lane of these robots are still going strong. But are they strong enough for the big bad wolf? With the help of blocks, a single toy robot can deal with wolves no problem. However, level 5 opens up a new stage in the game. The introduction of coinium toys. Oh my god, there's premium toys in this game? Alright, it's over, guys. Despite my jesting, coins aren't hard to come by, so I only barely struggle to afford every toy by the end of the game. If anything, the more toys to shake up my strategy, the better, because these robots have not let up 6 levels in. Alien might just be the dumbest toy in this game. I don't give a f***, I'm reusing this bit from the secret project, but you know those stupid no Peter, 1 Peter memes? Well, Alien is literally 2 Peter.
And this concept makes no sense because why would you want an attacker that covers 2 lanes except the one it's on? This unit fucking sucks, don't use this crap. Oh yeah, and witches, there's witches now. Being level 7 unlocks Hungry Dino, who despite having no range to be defended while vulnerable...
What?
Are you serious?
is actually a hard sleeper pick in the later levels. They can't fully counter this game's first original nightmare, Vampire, but surely Catapult can. I failed to mention it thus far, but a mechanic unique to Toys vs Nightmares are variable health pools and attack damages for toys and enemies. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because Vampire flies over your defenses dealing high damage, and Catapult is a glass cannon. There's really no reason for Catapult to have been a glass cannon other than distinguishing themselves from Toy Robot, which I appreciate, but as the only affordable counter to flying enemies, Catapult's fragility is especially glaring. Also, what's up with the booger fetish these goblins have? I swear they share the same description. Level 10 is where I'd argue TVN drastically picks up in difficulty. It's the introduction of Ogre, who looks like a cross between Shrek and Shrek, right? It's also at this point in the playthrough where the experience becomes more... existential? Familiar? I don't know the word for it, just listen.
On the topic of, like, this game in, like, the online scene, the only, like, really highly viewed videos that I've seen of this game are, like, playthroughs of some of the hardest levels in this game. And they didn't use, like, half of the toys that we've unlocked so far. So, like, I don't know if, like, the levels are really that hard, or if, like, the older toys just, like, suck.
Despite seemingly going nowhere, the faded memory resurfaces when we unlock...
Died of death.
Unlocking Digger, or Miner as I prefer to call them, there's really no good name for this guy, is the point of no return for Toys vs Nightmares. Despite also slowing enemies, Miner's main purpose is to counter invisible enemies. And while they're not the only toy that can do that, they're by leaps and bounds the most reliable. So on levels with invisible enemies, you need to bring Miner. Which sucks because Miner is not fun to use. They counter 3 enemies, they're really expensive, and to top it all off, their projectiles deal no damage to non-invisible enemies. If Miner were the only lock and key unit in this game, I could only complain so much. But my complaints bear repeating when Aviator Goblin makes their debut 2 levels later. Now there are early game flying enemies that are best taken out by Catapult, a toy I've already shared my disdain towards. And then it hit me. Players weren't using Catapult and Miner in the later levels because of power creep or preference. They're using them because these levels are practically designed around Catapult and Miner. And the last 2 levels are the biggest offenders of that. TVN tries to shake up our strategy by introducing Dollhouse, a defensive toy that can eat up to 1 ghost, while simultaneously introducing Boogeyman, an invisible enemy that can't be eaten by Dollhouse. This is because they turned physical after making contact with a toy, but they really found a way to make Dollhouse suck even before using it. Wanna know how good Dollhouse could have been? Upon making contact, Boogeyman summons an entire column of mini Boogeymen. Imagine being able to just... and they're gone. Tough shit for us, huh? Of course, if you play the last 2 levels the game wants you to, you can beat them with little to no struggle. In fact, being able to beat the game at all caught me off guard.
No way! That was not that bad!
Yeah, you did it!
However, there was a phrase in that faded memory I failed to uncover before it was too late. Nightmare. Nightmare mode is a hard mode of the main campaign, which honestly feels to only affect the early and later levels. There's not a lot done to differentiate both modes, other than de-tutorialifying the earlier levels. But there is one mechanic unique to Nightmare mode, which is this crazy Dave, I'm gonna pick Planturn, Cactus, and Lily Pad to use on a roof level, ass auto-select. Not only can you not see what's auto-selected until starting the level, but the game continues to auto-select toys until you have 2 slots of your choice by level 14. It does incentivize you to try out different toys, but like I said before, the later levels are practically designed around Catapult and Miner, which take up your 2 slots of choice. Speaking of which, let's discuss those different toys before covering the final level. Illustrated Book is essentially a twin sunflower, and the pre-placed toy at the start of every level. It produces 2 times the fantasy at 2 times the price, and it's pretty good. Kamikaze Bear is great, acting as a defensive toy that explodes on death. It's especially useful in a pinch. I've never found myself choosing Toy Car over Baby Boom, but the option for a second explosive is nice. Pirate Ship sucks. I can go on a long rant about it, but the fact of the matter is that it's just not designed for this game. Slime Catapult sounds good, but at an extra 50 cost, you won't be able to get him out in time for the waves of Aviator Goblins. And then there's Smart Alien. Was it really necessary to have 2-Peter if you were just gonna make me pay for 3-Peter later? Go f*** yourself. Pop-Up Book is the GOAT. I can't believe more walkthroughs didn't utilize it more. It produces fantasy while dealing damage, which is huge for weak-ass miners, and slow and weak-ass catapults. If there's any other attacker that's genuinely viable late game, it's Pop-Up Book. If I barely use plastic soldiers, what the f makes you think I'm gonna use the elite ones? I respect them for being the same price, but you need flying counters more for the early game, not late game. And finally, Doom in the Box. I'm not beating Toys vs. Nightmares with only Doom in a box. This toy is buns. Now that we've gotten that taken care of, let's talk about the worst level in the game. The last level of Toys vs. Nightmares is awful. It's so hard that not even Oravaonu, world-renowned and esteemed TVN tuber, was able to beat it. But I did. After 2 streams.
This actually sucks. Nah, I am not playing your stupid level now. It's just not possible.
If there's one word I can use to describe this level, it's inconsistent. At the very least, your strategy should play out the exact same way every time, but that's due in part to how restrictive Aviator Goblins and invisible enemies are to fight against. On my winning run, I prioritized having Catapult, Miner, and Pop-Up Book in my deck. I'm convinced you can beat this level with these 3 alone, but because you should have 5 other slots available, this list should clarify which other toys are useful to get. As for how to beat this level, it's a combination of smart decisions and luck with the wave progression. You're going to want to get as many Pop-Up Books out as you can before the first nightmare comes. You're also going to want to generate as much fantasy as possible by alternating between 3 books, but prioritizing the illustrated book. That's your top dog. By the time nightmares start spawning, you should deal with them one at a time to preserve fantasy for the first huge wave. Going forward in the level, consider this list of enemies to prioritize. And most importantly, never stop generating fantasy. Depending on how well you execute your strategy, which other toys you get, and how close/apart the enemy spawn positions are, this level will either feel moderately fair, or nightmarishly unbalanced. Either way, I hated this level, and the only rewards I got for beating it were the same end screen art, an endless loop of nightmare mode, and this stupid t-shirt. As mentioned at the start of the video, there's not a lot documented about Toys vs. Nightmares online, which should be indicative of the legacy it left behind. It didn't really leave one? I suppose it's widely considered the best Plants vs. Zombies knockoff, if you even consider it one, and one of the most documented PvZ knockoffs, ironically. But outside of that, there isn't any unturned stones or lasting impressions related to Toys vs. Nightmares. Except for one. Remember when I brought up world-renowned and esteemed TVN tuber Oravaonu? Well, they're the uploader of the 2 most viewed videos relating to Toys vs. Nightmares as of this video's release. On the surface, these videos seem to be nothing more than gameplay videos. Which is correct, they're just playthroughs of level 14 in normal mode and level 11 in nightmare mode. However, it's the background music that's worth noting. You may be wondering, what's worth noting about the background music? Other than the fact that it's an underrated banger. And to that I say, I know, right? But more importantly, this song, as well as a second that plays towards the end of Toys vs. Nightmares' last level normal difficulty, is lost media. Now that's a phrase we haven't heard in a while on this channel. We do know the name of the first track, Moonlight, which is either part of the album C.I.B. Stories of Darkside Man, or Stories of Darkside Man by an artist called C.I.B. I'm not quite sure which, but in any case, the artist is, or was, friends with Oravaonu. However, this is all the information available in this upload. A dead end for sure, but one exclusive to this video, because in the next upload, we uncover another song, as well as some different phrasing. Again, I'm not sure who or what C.I.B is in this context, but perhaps another upload could guide us further down the rabbit hole. Alas, after 90 uploads, the well was beginning to run dry. That is, until we found a small pocket of liquid gold in the comments of Oravaonu's last upload. Despite being unrelated to Toys vs. Nightmares or Stories of Darkside Man, user Hissing Fauna cuts right to the chase by asking how they can listen to this album. At the time this comment was made, Oravaonu seemingly hadn't been active for 5 years. But after sitting in purgatory for 2 years, they got a response. Hey, I made this channel 11 years ago when I was still working for Miniclip as a tester, so the videos were just my work. The company fired most of the workers in my country, and I just moved on. About my friend's music, it was called C.I.B. Stories of Darkside Man. I haven't heard from him for years. I did tell him to put his stuff up on Spotify, but he wasn't interested. I can look into it. I have 12 tracks from him, maybe I can release it for him? Blood on Sword, Grim Reaper's Song, Moonlight, Power of C.I.B, Shattered Infinity, Tree of Life, and some more. This was a huge update in the search, confirming that Oravaonu may still have access to this media. We also now know that C.I.B was part of the album's title, as well as the number of tracks in the album, and some track names we haven't heard before, such as Blood on Sword, Grim Reaper's Song, Power of C.I.B, and Tree of Life. Oravaonu's last words as of writing this script state that they have contacted their old friend about their music, but they're not hopeful. Investigating outside of YouTube yields 3 Reddit posts, 1 on the Lost Media subreddit, and 2 on the Lostwave subreddit. The first post states what we already know, but clarifies that Shazam won't work in identifying both songs. The second is more interesting, as both the OP of this post and the OP of the last discover what appears to be Oravaonu's Reddit account and reaches out to them. This culminates in the third post, which reveals Oravaonu's response in Car Doesn't Start. Hopefully you've got that car working by now, bro. As of writing this, it's been a year since Oravaonu's last response, and in turn, any update on this lost media mystery. We're not sure if Oravaonu will release this album, assuming they still have access to it, or if the album is even discoverable without Oravaonu's involvement. But this mystery has kept me coming back to this video, and in turn, Toys vs. Nightmares for the last 13 years. I find it so fascinating that despite people delegating TVN as just another PvZ knockoff, this mystery keeps the game known. In the same way that this specific remix of UN, Owen Was Her, keeps the memory of these fake Plants vs. Zombies 2 leaks alive. I'm not sure what'll come of Toys vs. Nightmares if this mystery is ever solved. Maybe this video will fade out of relevance the way it was supposed to, leaving the game to be a more distant memory. But honestly, I'm okay with that. I think it's easy to forget that games like Toys vs. Nightmares could be created in good faith when games like the Plants vs. Goblins Enealogy were created for cold hard cash. But Toys vs. Nightmares did a lot to differentiate itself in an honest way. And although not every decision was unique or perfect, it holds up surprisingly well. Keep calling it a PvZ knockoff, cause you know what? This game is the PvZ knockoff. And I mean that in the best possible way. It's got a charm that can't be understated, and even with my frustration, it was a pleasure to have officially beaten this tribute to Plants vs. Zombies. Thank you for watching, peace. Shout out to my channel members, Obama Gangnam Style, Metal Mario 64, Jan, Edsel.t, Harold Total Drama Island Fan, Mike Man Carlboy Pickle Son Fruit III, Macchiato Sam, Snow from Little, Ominous Anon, JD Williams, Hailstorm Magma, Brownie 2320, and DSF. If you're a channel member, new or old, and want a shout out in my next video, leave a comment on this members only community post. Thank you. Also, I just want to briefly comment on the wait for this video. These last few months have been really busy for my personal life. I've been working towards my career, picked up a traditional job, and still had to balance my work life with my social life and maintaining my physical health. As such, it's been a little harder to work on videos, but I still got plans for future content. Hopefully you'll stick around for my next video, it's gonna be really special. Until then, enjoy the My Singing Monsters ranking shorts, thank you for all the subs towards my second channel, and I'll catch you all soon.
Man, my closet looks great.